In Saudi Arabia, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros continues his official visit. The President Maduro held a meeting with the Crown Prince Mohamad bin Salman as part of a work agenda aimed at strengthening political, diplomatic, and energy alliances. The Prime Minister of Cuba, Manuel Marrero Cruz, arrived in Russia for an official visit with the purpose of expanding and consolidating bilateral relations. And also, French trade unions resumed a fresh day of mass demonstrations against the President Emmanuel Macron's contested pension reform. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is from the south. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. An Argentinian federal court acquitted Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner in the case known as the Key Money Route, where she was investigated for alleged money laundering. In a three-page ruling, federal court judge Sebastián Casanello ordered the acquittal of the Fernández de Kirchner, declaring that the formation of the present case did not affect the good name and honor of the vice president. The Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, launched on Monday an ambitious plan to end deforestation in the Amazon. The vast package of measures included in what has been called the Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Deforestation in the Amazon consists of the creation of new environmental protection areas covering 30,000 square kilometers. The announcement, made in the framework of the International Environment Day, alluded to strong sanctions against illegal deforestation. Lula anticipated that he will take advantage of the Amazon Summit to create an international cooperation center. In the last year of Jair Bolsonaro's government, the Amazon lost more than 10,200 kilometers of vegetation cover. On Monday, the French Minister of Foreign Trade, Olivier Bach, arrived in Brazil to advance in the negotiations of a trade agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur countries. During his visit, Bach is expected to meet with Brazilian Vice President Geraldo Alckmin, as well as with the Secretary of Foreign Relations, Maria Laura da Rocha. Negotiations between Mercosur and the European Union were suspended after 2 decades of negotiations due to concerns in Europe about the environmental policy of the then President Jair Bolsonaro. On Monday in Brazil, peoples commemorate the killing of British journalist Dom Phillips and the Brazilian indigenous expert Bruno Pereira, who were murdered a year ago while documenting environmental crimes in the Amazon rainforest. Phillips and Pereira disappeared on June 5, 2022, at the edge of the Javari Valley, a far-flung indigenous reservation in northern Brazil near the Colombian and Peruvian borders that experts call a heaven for drug traffickers, illegal gold miners, and poachers.
After a year, I feel a mixture of deep sadness and determination to continue doing our work, the work that Dom was doing. It was very positive and inspiring to see how the relatives and indigenous people there continue the fight. In spite of all the threats they continue to receive, nobody has given up. Neither on the side of the indigenous movement, nor on the side of our journalist community. Everybody is there, continuing the work and continuing the fight.
This loss, this estrangement is very difficult for us, but we understand that Dom had a legacy to leave behind. He had a mission, and this mission was beautifully fulfilled. Unfortunately, it ended in a tragic way, but I think that deep down he achieved some of his mission, his goal to give a voice to the Amazon.
We move on to other topics. On Monday, Colombian President Gustavo Petro received the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, at the Nariño Palace. The head of state met for several hours with the international expert, in a meeting that which also participated the Chancellor Álvaro Leiva and the Minister of Justice, Néstor Osuna, among other officials. According to the presidential office, among the topics on the agenda were the entry of the organism to the country to be incorporated to the investigation of all crimes crimes committed during the armed conflict, and the issue of the installation of an office of the court in Colombia, as requested by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, was reconsidered. And during his official visit to Saudi Arabia, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros held on Monday a working meeting with His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Arab nation, Mohamad bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. This is the third visit of the Venezuelan head of state to Saudi Arabia as part of a work agenda aimed at strengthening political, diplomatic and energy alliances. The relations between both countries have as their main point the consolidation of the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC.
Greetings to all the people of Venezuela. Today, President Nicolás Maduro has continued his official visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as he was saying from the city of Jeddah, the second most important city in the kingdom. And today there has been an important meeting that we have just seen between the constitutional president Nicolás Maduro and the Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohamad bin Salman. They have been discussing for a couple of continuous hours about world current affairs, about bilateral aspects of trade, investment, cooperation in the areas of culture, science and technology. We have seen common projects in the area of oil, gas, petrochemicals, infrastructure, agriculture, tourism, and they have reviewed this very important cooperation agenda.
And the Venezuelan government announced on Monday that it has resumed its trade relations with the island of Aruba. The resumption of trade relations between the Bolivarian country and the southern Caribbean island was achieved through the coordinated work of the Venezuela's Ministry of People's Power for Foreign Trade and the port and sanitary agents of the municipalities. And the Prime Minister of Cuba, Manuel Marrero Cruz, arrived on Tuesday in Russia for an official visit with the purpose of expanding and consolidating bilateral relations, which have been maintained uninterruptedly from 1960 to the present. Cuban Prime Minister's trip to Moscow is part of the expansion and consolidation of ties, especially in economic and commercial issues. Marrero will stay from June the 6th to 17th and will complete an extensive program which will include his participation in the city of Sochi, in the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council and in the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum to begin on June 14th. The Cuban Prime Minister arrived in Russia accompanied by Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrizas Ruiz, Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investment, the Ministers of Public Health, Tourism, Energy and Mines and Transport, as well as the Minister President of the Central Bank of Cuba. Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other studies coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Ecuador, the government announced that it continues to provide aid to the more than 11,750 people affected by the floods in the province of Esmeraldas. According to the Secretariat of Risk Management, 500 members of the armed forces, 110 uniformed members of the National Police and the Fire Brigade and its operational team have been sent to Esmeraldas, while 2 temporary shelters have been set up for the care of those affected, and humanitarian aid has already begun to arrive. And in the context of the World Environment Day, the National Alliance Against Water Privatization in El Salvador gave an ecological balance of the 4 years of President Nayib Bukele's government. During a meeting, the alliance expressed its concerns about the reprisals that some sectors are carrying out against environmental defenders. The institution demanded the protection and defense of ecologists. At the same time, it requested the inclusion of the mining issue in the free trade agreement with China and discussed the general law of water resources. On Monday, in the United States, demonstrators gathered at the Colorado State Capitol in silent sit-in to demand that Governor Jared Polis ban guns and create a gun buyback program. The sit-in comes amid a national debate over gun control and nearly 2 months after Colorado's governor signed into law 4 gun control bills, including one to expand the state's red flag law. There have been at least 276 mass shootings in the United States only in 2023, according to the Gun Violence Archive.
As a teacher, and I've been a teacher for 18 years, I feel incredibly vulnerable in my school building because of the easy access to guns. It's just too easy for someone to obtain a weapon of mass destruction and then to kill innocent people. It's way too easy in this country. The main purpose is to ask Jared Polis to sign an executive order banning all guns and buying those guns back in the state of Colorado. And we're hoping that he is going to be the tip of the iceberg and the domino that topples the rest of the people who are on our side. They need to know that we're out here, we're ready to be loud, we're putting our bodies, obviously, in front of the Capitol here in Denver, just to make sure that they understand that we are very serious about this.
French trade unions on Tuesday resumed a fresh day of mass demonstrations against the President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. The mobilizations aim to pressure on the plenary session of the National Assembly to approve an appeal proposed by the opposition that will lead to the annulment of the pension reform. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the General Confederation of Labour, Sophie Bennett, stated that France is an increasingly authoritarian country since the government is attempting to prevent the National Assembly from voting on the proposal that seeks to overturn the pension reform. In March, President Macron issued a decree to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2030 and to bring forward to 2027 the requirement to contribute for 43 years instead of 42 to receive a full pension. Despite widespread opposition, Macron signed the reform into law in April ahead of its implementation in September. Now we move on to other topics. The International Atomic Energy Agency welcomed Russia's readiness to allow the presence of the agency's observers at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The body General Director Rafael Grossi stressed that the area of the nuclear power plant is at risk of escalation of hostilities. Grossi stated that the agency's experts at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will report on the plant's compliance with safety principles, while violations will be publicly reported. Since March 2022, the plant has been under the control of the Russian military. In Russia on Monday, the governor of Belgorod, Vyacheslav Gladkov, reported that the region on Saturday was attacked by Ukrainian military 569 times with different types of weapons, including a drone-launched improvised explosive device, and that the area was attacked by Ukrainian military. On the other hand, Vladimir Darsnov, the head of the Shebeniko municipal district, reported on Monday that around 1,150 residential apartments have been damaged or destroyed after Ukrainian attacks over the past week on localities in the province of Belgorod. On Monday, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus and the European Union Commissioner for Health, Stella Kyriakides, signed what they referred to as a landmark agreement. According to a new collaboration agreement reached, the WHO will base its global health certification system on the EU's digital COVID pass. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StoreSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Monday, local media reported that calm has returned to the streets of Senegal's capital, Dakar, following 72 hours of demonstrations. The violence erupted on Thursday when opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was sentenced to 2 years in jail in a case he says is to stop him from running for president next year. On Saturday, authorities said that 500 people had been arrested since the beginnings of the protests against the president Macky Sall. So far, violence resulted in at least 16 fatalities and more than 350 wounded. On Sunday, Sonko's Pastef Patriots Party condemned the murderous repression by defense and security forces, accusing the government of deploying private militias.
We really hope that the demonstration will stop so that activities can resume. We've got Tabaski coming up in less than a month and lots of other events to prepare for. But nothing's happening at the moment. I really want things to get back to normal so that we can meet our needs.
Today is calm, which is why I've gone out to work, even if it is a precarious calm because people are still afraid and fear that the demonstrations will resume. The demonstrators are destroying everything in their path, and I don't think that's right. These are difficult times. We live from day to day. So going days without work is a real problem because our business is at its standstill. The movement of people is complicated and we can no longer earn a daily income. The informal sector is our livelihood and is the sector most affected.
And in Guinea-Bissau, votes continue to be counted following Sunday's legislative elections. According to local authorities, voting on Sunday took place peacefully with no arguments or fights reported. Voting Bureau member Barros Paz said the atmosphere was good, people came out to vote in droves, and everyone had their say on who will represent them for the next 4 years.
The process went smoothly, as did the vote count. Delegates from the various political parties and representatives were present. Most of the candidates were represented here, but visited all 66 polling stations in Guinea-Bissau, and no incidents were reported. In short, everything went smoothly.
There were no problems and voting took place peacefully, no arguments or fights were reported. The atmosphere was good. People came out to vote in droves. Everyone had their say on who would represent them for the next 4 years. In any case, everyone voted as they saw fit.
Also, to mark World Environment Day, Ivory Coast's Minister of Environment, Jean-Luc Assis, and the Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, Inger Anderson, held a press conference on the implementation of a new environmental code against plastic pollution in the country.
The country is struggling and experimenting with the best laws. But understand this is new, and we do not know necessarily what works. But as the minister has said, this is not easy, but he is finding his way through this.
Today we're no longer in the phase of making speeches for the sake of speeches. We're now in a phase of action, and so I see this year's World Environment Day as a day of action that will lead to something concrete, not just for the Côte d'Ivoire, but for the whole of Africa. That's why we're planning to integrate environmental education into schools as part of the implementation of this new code.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.